Every museum has a curator, and every exhibit, they have a story. But some stories don't need someone to tell them. They just speak for themselves. So tonight, I'm not going to tell you what any of this means. I'm just going to show you. And I'm going to ask them a few questions along the way, not because I expect an answer, but because some things deserve to be asked, even in silence. This one's from the inner city of South Central. Before any of it, before the triple doubles, before the MVP, before anybody outside of Los Angeles knew his name. Because why not? This was the next chapter. The Sonics made him the number 4 pick in 2008. No one in OKC could have told you what he'd become. And this is the one people point to, like it explains everything. It doesn't. Well, not really. Russ, what kept you going all those years? What made you get back up night after night when the whole league had a highlight reel of you falling down? Yeah, I figured that. You know, people forget.
Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew who I was.
Before he was a walking headline, he was just a kid from inner city LA who could jump higher than anybody had a right to.
Westbrook from UCLA.
Somewhere between the dunks and the draft classes, he became something else. Not just a player, a personality. A meme before we even called it that. A husband, a father, a guy in a kilt at the Met, daring anybody to say something. What did winning mean to you? I mean, really. No, not just the trophies. The actual feeling of it. Some things you don't say. You just play them over and over until everyone else understands too. Because why not? This swing isn't finished yet. That's not a mistake. We left it this way on purpose. Because whatever's next, the mentorship, the foundation, the kids who are going to grow up wanting to move just like he did, that part hasn't been built yet either. Were you ever afraid of what happens after the game stops needing you? This swing isn't finished. Neither is he. And that's the point. Last question. Now that you decided to step away from everything on your own terms, what are you the most proud of? That might be the best interview I've ever.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we are doing at an undisclosed time. Hello from Scotland, West Scotland, UK, where I'm at for this podcast. Joining me back in Dallas after his trip to the South Pacific is Ben McMahon.
Howdy, partner. I'm back in a place where you know what day it is, Wendy.
Yeah, so let me just say this. Recently, we were recording a podcast, and McMahon went to a family wedding in, I thought it was called Samoa, but it's
They
pronounced
pronounce it, I'm not even probably getting it right. They pronounce it Samoa.
Samoa.
More of like an emphasis on the first syllable.
Right. So I've been in Europe, and we were scheduling the podcast, and I Googled what time is, if it's 9 p.m. in Paris on a Sunday, what time is it in Samoa? And what time is it in New York? And it said in Samoa, it's 9 a.m. on Monday. And in New York, it's 4 p.m. or whatever it was, 3 p.m. So I said, hey, Jackson, how do we feel about 3 p.m. in New York, 9 p.m. in Paris, and 8 a.m. Monday in Samoa? Everybody gives a thumbs up. We're all good. We're all good. Okay, so here we get. It's 9 o'clock in Paris. It's 3 o'clock. No McMahon. Where's McMahon? Where's McMahon? We're texting. We're calling. Nothing. All right, well, I guess there's no McMahon for this podcast. like an hour or two later, he's like, "What are you guys talking about? It's Sunday morning." And I'm like, "No,
The
McMahon, it's
confusion
not
is
Sunday."
there's an American Samoa and a Western Samoa, and there's the
How
international
far
date.
apart are they?
Actually, my in-laws are in Western Samoa now. We had to come home because the boys had school starting, but it's a 35-minute flight apart. But the international date line is in between, so I was still on our side of the date line, and you thought I was on the other side of the date line. But we got it all figured out.
I mean, I literally had the wrong day.
I woke up the morning after the family wedding that we went to. I was in no shape to podcast. And was like, oh, what's going on? What day is it?
You were getting up the day after the wedding.
Exactly.
Oh my
You and Slater handled things just fine.
Oh my God. He was like, "What are you guys talking about? It's Sunday." I go, "How could we have the day wrong?" But like, okay, it's one thing to go 30 minutes away and it be a different time in terms of like an hour, but a different day.
Listen, I was confused, and I'm still confused because to get home, we got on an 11:20 p.m. flight from American Samoa. They have 3 flights to Honolulu a week, 3 flights in, 3 flights out. It's 11:20 p.m. out. That's a 5.5 hour flight to get on our 8 o'clock flight from Honolulu to make a connection in LAX to get home. We got home about midnight. The boys made it to school this morning somehow miraculously. I slept for a while.
Yeah, well, you land before you take off. Okay, now moving past it is nobody's fault, especially not mine.
Never
that I had the
yours.
wrong day. That I didn't understand you were in American Samoa versus Samoa. All right. Now comes the time.
Okay.
I know. Now comes the time where we, our friends at DraftKings, have posted the win totals. The majority of the offseason, we think, we don't know. Crazy things happen. The Lakers get sold twice in a year, for example. But for the most part, the rosters have largely been set. I'm not sure if Peyton Watson or Jonathan Kuminga switch teams is going to do that much. So we are taking a look at what the over-unders are, and we're going to start with the Western Conference.
Let's start with the Clippers.
Oh, yeah, well, let's not start there because the one team that doesn't have the win total posted is the Clippers because, there is an investigation. They do have one for the Raptors.
I know, yeah, and I guess they figure, well, the Raptors would have Brandon Ingram if they don't have Kawhi, so there's at least a kind of a baseline. But obviously, will Kawhi be playing? If so, is it in Toronto? Like, there's just no way to forecast the Clippers right now.
Well, since you left that, let's say the trade does go through. All right, so Vegas doesn't have a. Let's say the trade does go through and Brandon Ingram ends up as a Clipper. And look, maybe the Clippers go out, we don't know what's happened with Benedict Mather, and maybe they go out and try to acquire another piece. But let's just say for the most part that the trade goes through. Where would you put the Clippers with, trading out, getting Grady Dick and Brandon Ingram for Kawhi Leonard?
I mean, not as a playoff team,
right?
Which, according to this, tied for 8th are the Warriors and Suns at 40.5 wins. I don't think the Clippers are a top 8 team.
So you're saying they're a losing team with this trade?
Yeah, somewhere in the 30-ish win range, and the Clippers are going through or trying to get to a pretty major franchise reset that is obviously not about winning right now, but about moving past a pretty tough chapter as it all turned out in franchise history, just because the expectations were so high and then the payoff was not much. But yeah, somewhere in the 30s. Maybe a play-in team, probably not.
Well, here's one thing that I think we're going to have to pay attention to when it comes to these win totals, is that a bunch of these teams that were tanking last year are no longer tanking.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a team who last year could be just as good as they were last year, or possibly even better, and have fewer wins because you're going to have fewer of these gimmies on the schedule. The Grizzlies and the Jazz and the Kings, in terms of the Western teams, they are all trying to win. And Portland, not that they were tanking last year, but Portland is, Tom Dundon wants to win. So keep that in mind as we go
Dundon wants
through
to make the
these.
playoffs. He just doesn't want to give away T-shirts once they get there.
Correct. But I mean, Portland was a play-in team last year, and they made the playoffs. And I think that they intend to be better this year, or they're trying to make moves to be better. So, all right, let's start at the top, McMahon. The Oklahoma City Thunder, 2025 NBA champs, losers in 7 games to the San Antonio Spurs with injuries to their front line. They had some losses this offseason. Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe. They bring in some draft picks. DraftKings loves them. They have the highest win total by a game over the Spurs. We'll talk about in a second. They are at 60.5 with the wins. Are you an over or under on 60.5?
I mean, I'm an over, and I do think that they are a significantly thinner team. They don't have the depth that they had last year, just because they did lose 3 quality role players, one of whom was a starter. But they were a 68 win team a couple of years ago. They were a 64 win team last year. I guess you could say if that trend holds up, they're a 60 win team this year. But really, to me, this comes down in so much to, can Jalen Williams, J-Dub, stay healthy? They won 64 games last year, and he played like 30. What was it? I think 33. If I'm not mistaken.
How many of those games was he even close to 100%?
Yeah, and so I know he's working awfully hard on his body this summer to do everything within his power to position himself to be durable this year. Because the other question mark with them is just the depth at the power forward position. Chet Holmgren is their starting power forward, and then it's like, I don't know who, they'll play a lot of 4 guard stuff. Like, Caruso can play a power forward. He's not power forward size. J-Dub can play power forward. He's closer to power
Caruso
forward
guards
size.
Victor Wembanyama for chunks
of
games.
So they've got versatility in terms of like their wing players. But look, they're still an extraordinarily deep team. They still have unbelievable high-end talent. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I don't think he'll repeat as MVP again, but he's a 2-time reigning MVP. People are down on Chet because he had a really rough conference finals. But trust me, if Chet Holmgren was put on the trade block, there would be a
Chet
massive,
Holmgren was an All-NBA player last year.
Yeah, there'd be a massive bidding war for him. Holmgren was an All-NBA player last year. Jalen Williams was an All-NBA player the year before. They've got 3 All-NBA caliber players and a bunch of emerging young talent. We haven't mentioned A.J. Mitchell, who's also, his injury during the playoffs was a killer. He's emerging. Casey Wallace is emerging. They've just got so much talent, obviously an elite coach. I think their culture changed a bit with the loss of the guys that went out the door, but they still have elite culture. And, I don't know if they're the best team.
Look, I can boil this down. A.J. Mitchell's role is going to be bigger. How do you feel about that?
Great. He's a hell of a player.
Casey Wallace's role is going to be bigger. How do you feel about that?
Great. And I think it'd be in their best interest to get him signed to an extension, because he'll be really expensive.
Jared McCain's role is going to be bigger. How do you feel about that?
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not bad. Maybe not as excited about Casey Wallace's role growing, but I'd feel okay about it. And look, they had these guys who were mostly out last year. Tomas Sorber, and then they drafted these guys, Adai Mara and Bennett Sturts. I don't know, maybe they have a role. So I also feel good about that being over, despite the challenges in the West. Okay, number 2, the defending Western Conference champions, San Antonio Spurs, just was in Paris, where the Spurs were men about town. 59.5 wins. Over or under, McMahon?
I'm going over here too. They went over last year at 62, and you talk about emerging talent.
Yeah, I don't. What role should I play here to fill in for Bontemps to take a position opposite you on the Spurs? What should I be saying?
You could play the role of not paying off your bet yet. Okay, that's the role that you can play, because Bontemps sure as hell hasn't, despite the fact that I think they went like 21 and a half games over that over under.
Is that what it ended up being?
The over under I think was 40 and a half, and they ended up.
I know they made
62.
it by like mid-January. Yeah, I know.
And the thing about them is, you talk about ascending talent. Wemby is just at the launching point. Stephon Castle is launching. Dylan Harper, I think, is going to end up being their second best player, maybe as soon as this year. You could certainly argue that he was in the finals. So their core, I mean, they could have 3 All-NBA players as soon as this season. I think, obviously Wemby's, I expect to be the MVP frontrunner. Stephon Castle's going to be in the All-NBA conversation if he can stay healthy and keep his trajectory. It might be a little bit early for Harper, but he's on his way. And then
Jackson wants to know if you paid off the Wemby injury amendment, which I don't even remember what it was from the year before.
Yes, I paid Bontemps went out to, it was a lunch, so I paid it off. I sure did.
Yeah.
Bontemps was so determined not to pay off his bet that he left the pod.
I know, no kidding. It's one of his unfinished pieces of business.
Now, the Spurs did have one pretty significant loss this offseason. They lost Sean Sweeney, their associate head coach, the architect of their defense. Now, pretty good foundation for a defense if you're going to be an architect is to have Victor Wembanyama. But they brought in Billy Donovan. I'm not sure if Donovan's going to run their defense. I'm not sure exactly how that,
A fascinating hire by Mitch Johnson and Billy Donovan. Like I tried to think back to something comparable to it. I think Larry Brown came in as an assistant at one point, in his career, but that's an amazing addition to your bench.
Yeah. And, but again, so much young talent. I think Carter Bryant's got a chance to be a pretty significant contributor this year.
Yeah. Carter was over in Paris with the guys, working out. So, Carter Bryant's got some upside. Talk about a guy who was a big time athlete who was just beginning to harness what he can do. That is the definition of raw talent right there. So I agree with you.
But again, they won 62 games last year, and Wemby missed what it ended up being 19, I think.
Well, he got the exception to. He was a little bit under, right, the 65, and he got they kicked it over the edge, right? So
the NBA Cup exception,
yeah. I agree with you. I hate going over. I don't like that.
Conflict.
I know. Okay, so Spurs at 60 and a half, or Thunder at 60 and a half, Spurs at 59 and a half. And now we have a moat, a separation, a border, because all the way down, Vegas, DraftKings thinks there's only 250 win teams in the West. And they both are going to win 60 basically. And then all the way down. And I got to be honest with you, this is bullish with some unknowns about the Nuggets. This is bullish. But they have the Nuggets with the third best over-under in the West, 49 and a half. What say you?
At some point, I need to go under on some of these teams. But I can't quite yet. If Joker's healthy, they're a 50-win team. Like they won 54 last year.
Jamal Murray had a good year last year.
Jamal Murray had a great year last year. Christian Brown had a bad year last year, I think in large part because of an ankle injury that caused him to miss a ton of time and lingered. But again,
Cam Johnson had a bad year last year, and I think in large part because he was playing in a system they'd never played in before. And I think it affected him.
Well, that's interesting because typically the system of, hey, you're a shooter and Joker's going to get you great looks is a pretty good system to play in.
I know. I'm not trying to make an excuse for him.
I hear you.
What he was being asked to do was something that he had not done before.
Yeah, and look, there's a huge question mark here which is, will Peyton Watson be on the roster? He had a great month that he's hoping to cash in on. And, it's looking very uncertain at this point. There are certainly other teams that are interested. His asking price of basically Christian Brown's contract, I don't think he gets that. I'll also believe that he plays for the qualifying offer when I see it. And you know what? I'll also believe that they go through the full season with Cam Johnson still on the roster if they keep Peyton Watson when I see that. Because you can talk about, we've got freedom to spend. The luxury tax payment's not determined when the season starts.
That's correct.
So
yeah, and I mean that's the other thing. They may want to I don't have any insight into this, but they may want to see whatever the team is, whether it's with Peyton Watson or whether it's, by the way, like I keep seeing all these, people speculating or reporting on Peyton Watson sign-in trades. The Nuggets are a second apron team, and there's restrictions now involved in what you can do with sign-in trades. So,
and also just like, hey, if they're going to lose them, they don't necessarily want to get salary back.
Right. So anyway,
but again, I'm just not going under 50 on a Joker team.
I agree. If he plays 70 games, they get to play all these games in Denver. Their front six are still really good. After that, it gets a little squishy. So their off season is really, you got to give them an incomplete. But the real question is going to be whether or not they slice any more salary or what happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. After them, the Minnesota Timberwolves come in at 48.5. The Timberwolves are, all right, well, let me just ask you this. 48.5 on the Timberwolves, fourth highest over under. Your thoughts?
I should ask you, didn't you just hang out with him in Paris too? They had basically their whole roster over there.
In Paris.
Oh, yeah. Rudy Gobert hosting.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
LaMelo Ball and Ant Edwards apparently picked up all the travel costs. They had like 14 or 15 guys over there. Yeah, they had like a full-blown thing.
Well, I do know that I walked past a very expensive hotel, and there was a whole bunch of Sprinter vans there, which is usually an indication of NBA players about.
There you go. There was one video where Rudy pans to the Eiffel Tower shimmering at night, and then you hear Ant's voice. That looked like Walt Disney.
Well, also Victor did that too on his Instagram, where he
said it's just like the Riverwalk.
Yeah.
I am a Timberwolves skeptic this season. I've been a LaMelo Ball skeptic for a while now. In his defense, he proved me wrong last year, and the Hornets were so convinced by it, they shipped him out the first chance they got. But typically you make a big trade, and I've learned this the hard way, because remember how high I was on the Dame Bucks. I think I picked them first in our wins pool draft that year. You make a big trade like this, it's going to take some time to figure out fit, chemistry, all those kind of things. That's in part why they went over to Paris as a group, start working on the chemistry and all that kind of stuff. I know Ant and LaMelo spent some time together this summer, but I just think playing styles can take some time to figure out, and they don't have a lot of depth, and they do have a gaping hole at power forward that they're going to have to fill, it appears, by playing Jaden McDaniels out of position.
So I think when it comes to Minnesota, first off, I just want to point out Chris Finch is a very good coach, and he has routinely been able to maximize his team when it matters. Maybe not in November, maybe not always in February, but he's often been able to maximize his team. So I think there's three things that you have to ask yourself with Minnesota. One, is Jaden McDaniels about to take a leap after the way he played in the playoffs last year? Is this role, them clearing out some stuff for him? Like, is this, by the way, he's extension eligible. Mm-hmm. So that's something to keep a little eye on. Is he about to like leap forward into like being an all-star? That's number one. Number two, does LaMelo Ball getting there and LaMelo Ball's health free up Ant in a way that they weren't able to do for the last two seasons? ever since they traded Karl Towns,
Yeah.
where those two work really well together, and the space comes out, and Ant, playing off LaMelo ends up being like an unlocking mechanism.
Well, and they doesn't have to deal with a million double teams. Yeah.
Exactly. The third thing, and I don't have enough information on this, but would be interesting to watch, is whether Johan Berenger, their first round, their 7-footer, I guess he's 6'11", this guy that they drafted in 25, who they really high on, and was essentially like off limits in all these trades, and I think looked good in summer league. Whether or not he's ready to step in and like make a contributing role.
Well, they need him to be a quality. They need him to be a quality backup to Gobert. They need him to give them 16, 18 minutes a night, and he's the same type of player. Springy, rim running, rim protecting, that type of guy.
I mean, or is he a guy who comes in and like is able to like make he's not just like filling a role, like he's able to like be a plus player. I don't know the answer to that.
A plus player is, but my point is, if Rudy's on the roster, his role is limited because you don't play. Those guys aren't playing together.
Probably not. I agree, but I just that's their upside young guy. I mean, they've had these young guys that have had upside. I mean, Terrence Shannon has a little bit.
No, he's got some.
But are one of these young guys going to hit? And they're really super high on Berenger. So I am inclined to go under on this, but I am also saying this with these big open questions that I openly admit I don't know.
Well, and look, the other thing with the Wolves is they aren't, as you said, always a great regular season team, but they are a team that they're one of the few teams that's won playoff series in each of the last few years, including a couple trips to the conference finals.
Without question.
Better in the playoffs.
Without question. All right. Houston Rockets with the fifth in the over-under, 47.5. One of your teams, McMahon.
Yeah, I'd go over on this. They were a 52-win team last year, despite the fact that they sorely missed Fred VanVleet. And VanVleet will be back. I don't will VanVleet just hit the ground running? I can't guarantee that. But he'll be back, with more than a full year removed since he tore his ACL and apparently did some other damage to the knee when he did that, by the way. But more than anything, it's not even about like what his numbers are going to be. Like, they have a floor general, they have a leader, they have a guy to run the offense, they have a guy to set a tone for them defensively. So just with the return of VanVleet, and I don't know right now what Steven Adams' status is entering the season. But they really missed those two guys late in the year. They missed VanVleet all season long, and they still won 52 games.
I was looking up their numbers. Remember, they were 8th in offense last season, despite being a horrible fourth quarter team.
They weren't 8th in clutch offense, I can assure you.
At least in clutch play. And they were bottom 5 in turnovers and like bottom 10 in assists. And in the fourth quarters, they were almost worse.